Who's gonna do the dishes?
I am not doing the dishes this time. I feel like I've done them the past few nights. I think you stand
Well, you usually do them while I'm putting Aslan down.
But also after, so...
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying it's bad. I was just saying, like, usually that's what happens.
Right. So you're due for some dishes, is what I'm feeling.
All right, then no podcast.
No, we have to podcast. How often do we get the opportunity? We have to seize it while it's here.
I fall in love just a little bit every day with someone new. I fall in love just a little bit every day with someone new.
You're listening to Remodeled, the podcast. Remodeled is a project whose goal is to expand the cultural narrative on healthy relationships in order to include ethical non-monogamy, non-partnered, asexual, open, and more. We are here to redefine love.
I fall in love just a little bit every day with someone new. I fall in love just a little bit every day with someone new.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Remodeled, the podcast. I'm your polyamorous mama, Jessica-levity Daylover. And with me, as always, the bond agency to my subprime mortgage.
I can't top that one. I'll just say I'm your Jack McCoy for life, baby.
Oh, I thought you were going to play off of my subprime mortgage.
Oh, that was too brilliant.
Thank you.
I couldn't follow it up.
Thank you. They labeled these AAA tranches. Okay. I'm proud that we even know what that is. I was so excited to get that out that I don't remember the rest of the show.
Okay.
Okay, so
that was our podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
We used to say we were broadcasting live from Dream Life Studio, but Dream Life Studio is no more.
It is gone. It has been taken over, usurped by the one Lucius Soul.
Yes. So just a quick check-in. Our oldest turns 4 in less than a month.
My goodness.
And Lucius just turned 10 months. He's going to be a year in March. How?
He is still a baby. That's all I'm saying.
He's still a baby.
He's still a baby.
So if you remember, we had to throw him in the recording studio, which is in our basement, because he was not a great sleeper as a baby, and so he needed a cave-like dwelling, and so we put his crib in the recording studio, and I started renting a co-work space, which is the best thing to ever happen to me and this project, the podcast and everything. And then we just realized we don't need the recording studio. I was holding on to it for dear life, and I was like, well, even if I didn't have another place to record, which our co-work space literally has a recording studio in it, I still wasn't making it into our recording studio to record. It wasn't happening, and we were using equipment that is just not necessary anymore. I mean, if the sound quality isn't as good as it usually is, it's because Joe and I are sharing a mic, and at least in the recording studio, I could multi-track us on different mics. And now we're literally huddled in our bed.
It was a fun setup. This is also great.
Yeah,
but I was surprised with how easily you let go of the recording studio.
Yeah, thank you. It felt good. Once I let go, I'm oh, I love getting rid of stuff.
That's
and I
true.
love simplifying. And honestly, just we can't record at home anyway. We just can't. If we needed to be in the recording studio, he's sleeping in there right now. And so now I have a USB mic versus, previously I had microphones that went through a literal soundboard, with multi-channels. And so now I just have a mic that plugs straight into my computer. It doesn't even require a driver.
Turns out that's all you need these days.
Yeah, so, and I think it's going to be good sound. So I thought that if I stopped editing episodes, it would allow me to get them up more. But I literally have 4 amazing interview episodes in my backlog, because literally just having to produce the front end and the back end, the bumpers and stuff, that is enough of a step for me to not be getting these episodes out. And so I either need to literally let all of that go, or I just need to like, I mean, because we actually do have a nanny now. Like, that used to be the problem. Like, we could not find a nanny. And now we have consistent nannyage happening.
Which is awesome and a miracle. And we are so thankful.
Yeah. So I just think I need to be... it just needs to be on my to-do list when I get to work, and I'm still figuring that out. Like, I'm still unmedicated ADHD, and, you know, I fill a lot of my 2 working days. Like, I work Thursday and Friday. I fill a lot of those days with client peer support calls, which I love, but then it leaves little time for media production, which is hard, because it's like... You know, it's the capitalist hustle of, like, peer support is money coming in and creating media is just fun, you know?
Yes. Well, with all of that peer support still, I feel like you're always doing interviews on the regular, so it doesn't surprise me that you've got 4 in your backlog.
Yes, and these are all really exciting interviews, but it made me realize, like, because my favorite podcast, which does happen to be a polyamory podcast, sort of tangentially, is... Dear Jessamine with Jessamine Stanley and her partner Ash. And like, they do an episode every week and they literally just sit down and hang out. And they're usually hashing, I mean, they have a format that they loosely stick to, but they're usually just, I mean, I love it so much because it's so vulnerable. They're usually hashing out problems in their polyamory just live on the mic. It's like a conversation that would be happening anyway, and they just capture it. And I was like, why aren't we doing that? And as much as people appreciate my interviews, I know for a fact people just want to hear me and you talk.
Well, we've said this a bunch, that if we just had hit the record button at the beginning of what had turned into like an hour and 15-minute conversation on some random Tuesday night after the kids are in bed, you know, we'd have so many episodes.
Yeah, no, for real. So I think, I mean, we are going to set the intention to start capturing episodes just between Joe and I and bring kind of life back to that dynamic, even if it doesn't have a specific topic. But we do have a lot to talk about because so much has happened.
Oh my gosh, I can't even process it all. So much has happened.
So yeah, and maybe it's good that like we didn't do it right away, because I don't really believe in sharing some of the tougher lessons. Like, definitely if you follow us on Instagram, specifically if you subscribe to our close friends list, which is an exclusive access to behind the scenes of our life on Instagram. It's like a private channel. You can join our Patreon at the $5 a per month level or higher and get access to our close friends list. At least on that, it's like my diary. So my close friends list has a real time, like, holy shit, this just happened and this was amazing, this was painful, this is the lesson I'm learning, this is the sex I just had, you know, and like, so that's pretty much the only way to stay super up to date on like what's going on. And then there's our public Instagram, our feed and stuff, and like the non-exclusive stuff, which is, I don't talk too much. Like, you might catch some personal updates on there, but the real juicy stuff is on our close friends list.
Yeah, and a lot of the time it's just general things, not necessarily related to specific dynamics, but things that just come up in general that you would post just out there on the regular social media.
Yeah, well, and my point was just that, like, I'm glad we don't dive right into a podcast episode after some of this stuff, but I do like that I am able to get real time what's going on in our life, at least in one avenue, which is our close friends list on Instagram. So it's just like weird, because I was like, okay, well, what do we need to update people on? Like, our life is interesting enough that we could just do a podcast episode telling people where the Daylovers are at, and then we started to make a list of what's happened, and it's so nuts. It's
so nuts. It's so crazy. But I think a good place to start, where I might have left off before previously, is talking about regional dating and just how common that is in the polyam world, where it's hard to find matches in your city, even if you live in a populous place. I mean, you're more likely to, but at the same time, we had just become aware that a lot of polyamorous people drive several hours or even get on airplanes to see their partners on the regular.
That's the last thing we talked about?
I don't know if it's the last thing we talked about, but it's relevant to our updates.
Well, yeah, so I guess where I would start this story is that as far as my postpartum journey went, it was roughly around October, like end of September, October, that I decided to re-download the dating apps. And that's just it's a big moment for any polyamorous postpartum mother or just postpartum mother who's single or whatever. Like, after Aslan, it was a big deal when I was like, okay, I can date. I have the spoons for dating and myself just, body image stuff. Like, I had gotten to a place where I felt like, okay, I can confront this. And at that same time, you also made connections. I don't think like you had gotten on dating apps yet, but you and I had taken a break from dating apps after Lucius was born.
Yeah, and I think I had reached, taking a break from dating apps, of course, while we adjust to our new lives. And then it was kind of sporadic here and there throughout the summer. And then things seemed to pick up a little bit more in the fall.
I guess we can just pick up, like, at your my birthday. Yeah.
Yes.
So, like, Joe's birthday was the end of September, and you were having birthday blues.
Birthday blues for a number of reasons, but one of them was it had been hard to find some good connections. That wasn't the source of it. It was more like darkly existential.
No, but that was the specific trigger was that you experience this pattern, and it's really weird. And I have to say, I witness it, and it's like, I don't know why this is something that happens to you, but it's like somebody will confess an interest or like send you a lot of fiery passion interest and then like change their mind or like disappear. And that had happened on your birthday.
Correct. Yes, that is a good summation of what happened. And so in the wake of that, I was feeling frustrated and definitely had some birthday blues. Absolutely.
Yeah, so he was super pissed off on his birthday. And so then I got on Instagram and said like, hey, Joe's having a really bad birthday. If you are on Team Joe, if you're in the Joe Daylover fan club, could you please DM him and just tell him why you love him, if you think he's sexy, blah, blah, blah. And, like, my final present of the day because, like, he's not on Instagram, so I was like, he won't see it coming in all day. And so then my final present at the end of the day, I was like, hey, babe, open your Instagram and go check your DMs. And there was, like, 35 messages.
Yeah, there were quite a few in there. I mean, it was one of the greatest birthday presents ever, like, going through the messages. And I responded to every single person, and I tried to give some time and attention to, and it was very enjoyable and a lot of fun. Lots of good flirting, some really nice sentiments, and just affirming feel-good feels.
Yeah, it was like, and it totally alchemized like where you were at. And then I was like, oh, I'm such a good wingman, because from that, you ended up striking a very intense, you said, spiritual connection with another polyamory content creator that you are still in connection with.
That is correct. Yes. Annie Undone, my East Coast gal.
Yeah. So if you are on Instagram, at Annie_Undone is a polyamorous, kinky, queer
poets.
Yeah. And so that was you guys had intense NRE, even though it was long distance. Like, that was definitely a really intense connection from your birthday.
From the start, yeah. And it was like that through the fall, which was really nice.
And it's still going, but it's entering more of a comet situation.
Sure. Well, long distance dynamics are challenging, and what we have is really unique and awesome, and so many great things to look forward to.
But then somebody saw on Facebook, they messaged and they said, hey, I saw about like reaching out to Joe. I'm regional, like they're a couple hours away, and like they are 2 hours away from us. And they were like, I would love to go out with Joe. And I was like, slide into his DMs, baby. And so I sent this person who had slid into the Remodeled Love DMs, sent them to your DMs. And the next thing I know, like, that was like going really well.
Yes, let's call them Jade. Jade and I were talking and immediately had really good chemistry over the text, and I'm a sucker for that stuff. Turns out I'm very much like you in that regard. And so that was pretty steady. communication for a couple of weeks, and they really enjoy coming to Reno and came up here for the first date, went awesomely, and then, started planning like 2-week frequency things because they have children, and so every other weekend they don't, and would go 2 hours away to see them. And so it became a really awesome regional situation there for a hot second.
I mean, and like, I was like, it's just, now I'm cringing so much at how you and I are so like, this is the thing we've been waiting for, that we've been like every new relationship, I'm like, this is the breakthrough relationship.
Yeah. And I felt right. I would always criticize you for it, and then I turn around and did the same thing,
which is a pattern.
Well, it's something that people do.
Well, the tide always turns, but thank you for admitting that, because you do criticize me a lot and then turn around and do everything that I do. And it's like,
well, I'm a Libra, aren't I?
I just wish that you would recognize that in those moments, or at least own up to it when it, because like sometimes you're like, oh, I am totally doing the thing I always judge you for, and other times you're like, well, I'm different and mine's justified and yours isn't justified.
You're not paying attention to these like circumstantial factors over here.
Oh God, it's so annoying. Anyway, we have a really funny story. So like, for your first date, you texted for a while, but for your first date, they came up here, and you were like, I was like, do y'all want a hotel room? And you're like, well, I don't want to be presumptuous. Like, it's just a first date. I don't know. And then like, you took them to like walk around at a nice outdoor place, but then they wanted to come back here and play like mom.
Yeah, so this person all about the kitchen table and was more than happy to come back and hang out. And so you were hanging out with a friend at our house and ended up being able to go out because she wanted to parent with me and the kids, believe it or not.
She, like, her idea of a first date was like, she wanted to play with our toddler and give the baby a bath. And I was just like, oh my God, dream woman.
Yes, totally. And as much as those elements are definitely, looking back, were rushed, at the same time, I appreciated someone who's like, you know what, I don't want to do the standard, like, take me to dinner and let's go have drinks kind of a thing. That's not really, I enjoy it, but it's not really my thing. And so it was much simpler, like getting outdoors and then hanging out at the house, which was really chill, really low maintenance. And they ended up spending the night, but our baby was...
Yeah, okay, so we have a funny story to tell y'all.
Yeah.
Like, the story gets tragic, but like, this, we've been wanting to tell
a funny
this story
first
for a minute.
before the tragic part. So,
so like, yeah, it's their first date, and we have this like beanbag that like throws out into a like mattress on the floor. We saw it on Shark Tank.
But strangely enough, worked well in the situation. And so where we had this set up was just outside of the studio, which has been, remember, taken over by the baby.
Yeah, so like in our 90-year-old house, you go down the basement stairs, there's a... Can you stop doing that?
Well, I'm just getting comfortable.
It's been going on for like 5 minutes. So you go down our basement steps, there's like a playroom, and then there's a bedroom where Lucius is. That was the recording studio. And the mattress on the floor was in the playroom. And so the first date, turns out she's gonna spend the night, and I was like, cool, do your thing. I'm the cool wife.
Yeah, you totally were. Like, you were rolling with the situation. And as you have in the past, and we've gotten pretty comfortable with trying to make space for each other here inside the house.
Well, it's just really nice.
Over the years.
Because it's like, I'm all about Airbnbs and hotel rooms, but like, if we can save $200, that is a lot of money in our world. Like, for real.
Yeah, no, and it's not that terrible of an inconvenience for the other person, I've felt.
Yeah, so they were downstairs and could definitely hear you guys having sex. And I was like, you know what? Good for them. And then the baby started crying, and it's just like, at this point, you know, I mean, he's still not really sleeping through the night, but by that point it was definitely, we were in a really bad phase but it was like normally not until like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was like screaming his head off at 10:30, I was like, this has never happened before.
Yes.
This isn't normal. Something abnormal is happening.
Right
and of
now.
course it is happening on the one night where like Joe is finally getting laid and somebody has come to see him and have a date, and like I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it became a polyamorous sitcom really quickly, unfortunately. And I think throughout the night we did a good job of bouncing back and forth off of each other. I mean, I definitely had my other motivations that I was trying to maintain. And it was and I'm sure being the other person is annoying in that situation, but ultimately we made it work. The baby did not have to go to urgent care.
Well, so, okay, you're a terrible storyteller. You just skipped all of the details.
Well, I'm just summarizing, because I know that we have a lot of shit to talk about.
Okay, no, so the baby's scream crying, and it's the type of cry where you're like, oh, well, we can't just let him cry this out. Something is wrong. So now keep in mind, I can't go get the baby. I'm on baby duty. And when I thought that the baby would just wake up one time at 3 o'clock in the morning and need a bottle, I was like, oh, that will be no big deal. But now it's like 10:30, 11. The baby is scream crying and I can't go get him because in order to go get him, I would have to walk through the open room where y'all are having sex. And then I am like, I'm going to be the cool wife. I'm going to be the cool wife. I was so stoked to be the cool polyam wife. And now I'm starting to get fucking annoyed because the baby is scream crying and you're having sex. And I was like, is he not going to go get the baby? He's not going to go get the baby. And I'm like trying to send psychic signals like, yo, motherfucker, go get the fucking baby. Like, how long are you going to let him cry? And then I started to get so annoyed, even though I'm sure it would have thrown me off too. But I just started to get super annoyed that you were just like not going to get him. And then I was like, I had to yell down the stairs. I was like, Joe. And you're like...
Well, okay, yes, totally. All of that is accurate. And I think I would have had the same reaction too if I were in your shoes. But a little bit of context is that at the time we were attempting to sleep train him and let him cry it out through certain situations. And so it wasn't not customary for us to use this approach.
But what was annoying me was that, yes, we were sleep training, so occasionally we would let him cry it out at 3 a.m. But this wasn't... Stop doing that! But this wasn't 3 a.m. And I could hear in his cry something was wrong. And so I was like, this motherfucker's gonna be like, well, we let him cry it out. Even though that didn't apply to the situation, and you're... wanting to get laid brain was like using that.
Well, perhaps a little bit, but at the same time, I think you might acknowledge that you would have acted similarly to me.
I mean, I would not...
of the same situation. So here in the tide always turns principle.
See, and I dare not say that I would act differently because the universe, like, we don't, I just made content on that. The second that you're like, I would do it so differently, the universe will be like, oh, really? But, like, I don't know, as a mom, and, like, my heart races. I get a lot of anxiety when when I can hear that something is wrong. So I think I absolutely... Because I wouldn't have been able to have sex, and that's the difference between me and you.
Well, yeah. Well, this didn't go on for too long. I mean, eventually,
I had to yell down there, Joe, are you going to deal with the baby? And so then you awkwardly, like... sexed and naked, like, come, like, so I'm at the stairwell, and then the next thing I know, like, a naked Joe is handing me the baby. If non-polyamorous people are listening to this right now, they're probably offended.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But this is real.
This is real, and this is my attempt at gaining some self-care, some valuable, some very much needed long overdue care.
And it just sucks because, like...
the timing was just shit, and it's just been like that throughout the year at different times where we've tried to combine the two worlds, and it's just been chaotic.
Well, it just
randomly.
was weird because he had never, like, this hadn't happened. Like, we were very confident that she could spend the night because he was only waking up at, like, 3 a.m., quick bottle, back to sleep. So we knew he was going to wake up, but we're like, oh, it's going to be easy peasy. So the fact that he was probably teething, and we just didn't see it coming. Like, it came out of nowhere. And so then I'm trying to console him, and it's one of the inconsolable something's wrong. And so now I am upstairs with a screaming baby who I am praying to God does not wake up our toddler, because I am on mom duty and I am slowly mourning the loss of... I was really looking forward to being, like, the cool polyam wife who totally rocked child duty and then, like, made you all breakfast in the morning or whatever. And now I'm frustrated, I'm frazzled, and I'm super stressed out. And it's one of those things, like, if we had been in a really bad place in our polyamory, I would have absolutely weaponized the situation in order to, like... guilt trip you, end the scene, be like, see, this is why we can't do polyamory. But I definitely...
Thankfully, that did not happen, and I'll give you credit. Like, you kept your cool despite the stressors, obviously, of the situation. I do think you were a bit, like, hard on me. Like, there's a piece of it, obviously, of, like, the annoyance that long-term nesting partners have for each other on their triggers kind of type thing playing into it. But also... you did more than that a great job of keeping your cool.
No, see, this is why you gotta let me tell the stories, because I'm getting to the point where I snapped. So I was cool, and then there was, like, because then I got the baby to stop crying, and I was able to come down and put him back down. And then I went upstairs thinking we were home free and, like, we had made it through. And, like, then you guys were having sex again. Then I remember you came up, like, there was this moment where you came up and you're, hey, babe, do you know where the lube is? Like, just that funny polyamory moment where your husband emerges from the basement in his underwear asking you for lube. And I was like, is this my life?
Yeah, totally. So things had lightened up there for a little while.
But then he woke up again. And screaming. And then we repeated the situation where once again, I had to ask you, are you going to get the fucking baby? Like, clearly something is wrong. And by that point, I did snap and I wasn't cool, and you came upstairs and I'm, like, holding a baby who will not stop crying, and I was like, get out of the house, like, go get a hotel, because, like, the problem was that, like, if our house was not 1,000 square feet or we had a bedroom, like, if our house had been set up where y'all were in a guest room, I could have handled a bad parenting night. I might have been bitter the next day and held that shit over your head and been like, you fucking owe me, because of course the one night you had a house guest was, like, one of our worst, like, baby overnights in a really long time. But I would have handled it. The problem was that I couldn't get to the baby. And so by that point, I was just like, just get a fucking hotel room. Like, why are we doing this? This is so stupid. Get out of the house. Leave right now. Get a hotel room. I don't even want to look at you, because I was so annoyed that I kept having to ask you to get the baby. And so I did snap, and I got really bitchy.
Yeah, no, totally. There was a period of time there where it was really rough, for sure, absolutely.
And I kept going in and out of, like, I'm really sorry, I know I'm being a fucking cunt right now, but also...
Yeah, no, and I think I remember being equal parts, like, I understand why you're mad, but I need you to fucking pull it together, also.
And it just sucks because I just pride myself on being so chill, but, like, I just was really... I mean, any parents listening to this right now, like, especially moms, like, you know what I mean when you're like, why are you not solving the problem of the baby right now in the way that is so obviously needs to be solved in my head, and so it was just a really bad night. I ended up taking him for a drive because he was inconsolable, which I think in his whole life, he's had some rough nights, but he's maybe only had 3 I needed to put him in the car and drive around inconsolable nights, and that was one of them. It was just surreal. So I ended up like taking him for a drive and coming back.
This whole time, our toddler does not wake up miraculously.
Thank God, yeah. So then I take him for a drive. I come back. I pass him back down the stairs to you. And then I ended up, like, actually going out for another drive with, like, an old twin flame who, like, reemerged back into my life for a minute.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
And that was really cool because I had a hot makeout session in the truck. Came home. Y'all were passed out. Then our toddler wakes up in the middle of the night and comes in to sleep with me. And then the next thing I know, it is 4:30 in the morning, and I am being handed the baby who is up. I am sleeping with my toddler in the bed. I've had like 4 hours of sleep. The baby woke up at 4:30, and Joe has the audacity.
That's right.
To bring me the baby at 4:30 in the morning and go, hey babe, can you get up with him so that Jade and I can have one last session before she leaves, because she had to leave at like 6 a.m.
Right.
So I got up at 4:30 and I did it without an attitude. I was definitely tired and really like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, I wasn't pissed. I was defeated.
Totally. And I would have felt the same. Also would have done it for you.
And that's the thing that fuels me is I was like, Joe would do this
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Joe would do this for me and I would want him to. And so like that's where my motivation comes from. So dragged myself out of bed, hung out with the baby while they had like one more, morning delight.
And it worked out strangely enough. They were, and the whole time Jade was cool with the situation.
So cool
and yeah, rolled with it really awesomely. We still had a good time, obviously. Would have been a hotel room would have been the right call in that situation. But I got to have a vacation basically. The next time we went on a date 2 weeks later, I went to their place 2 hours away. They were Sans children, and so it was like a weekend getaway.
Yeah. So, and it just looked like this really promising situation where like she was excited to come here once a month, and like I was planning on hopefully having a lover or somewhere to go so that on the weekend that she came here, I would peace out and like they could play house and like Joe would be able to have someone help him take care of the kids while I was gone. And then Joe would go there once a month when she didn't have her kids, and you would get this getaway weekend with your lover. It was like so crazy. And she wanted you to bring our kids there. So like maybe once a month or once every other month, you would take both of our kids for a weekend there and take them to do fun things. And we were like, oh my God, we've hit the holy grail. Yeah,
absolutely. As people who love Kitchen Table, this was just music to our ears. The various possibilities before us were so enticing. And I think looking back, we definitely rushed a lot of those elements, and that should have been a red flag.
No, we're going to get to that. So we're going to take a super quick break. And then when we come back, we'll share like how this story tragically ended and how it's connected to a tragic situation on my part, and like everything we learned from that, which feels so disconnected from who we are now. It was weird.
Wow.
It was like,
yeah, I mean, it was recent, but it just seems so long ago.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, we'll be right back.
Hey friends, this is Jessica-levity Daylover, reminding you that you are not alone on the polyamorous path. If you're looking for peer support or coaching on your non-monogamous journey, and you want to work with the Daylovers, head to remodeledlove.com and book with us today.
This episode is supported by FX's Grotesquerie, a new series from executive producer Ryan Murphy. Heinous crimes unsettle a small community, and the local detective feels these atrocities are eerily personal, as if someone or something is taunting her. Starring Niecy Nash-Betts, Courtney B. Vance, Leslie Manville, and Travis Kelce. FX's Grotesquerie premieres September 25th on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Okay, and we're back. So, right around this time that you meet Jade, and this looks like this is like this ideal relationship that we've waited forever. Like, I had visions of like, oh, this is going to be a long-term relationship.
And, I felt the same, which also should have been a red flag. I was, strangely enough, sold on this person, and I found that 2 hours away distance was kind of ideal because it really stoked an awesome fire in the in-between, but it wasn't so far away that you couldn't make easy arrangements.
Yeah, so around this time, I actually hit the rock bottom of a core wound. Again, if you subscribe to our Patreon, $5 a month level or higher, you get access to our close friends list on Instagram. And you can actually go back and watch on my highlights reel. If you're an Instagram person, you know what I'm talking about. So it's, for patrons only, but I call them my diary entries. There's now diary 1 through 8. And I think each one holds about 25 minutes of footage. So I now have 8 diaries, 25 minutes each. You can do the math. But diaries 1 through 3, I talk about my core wound and how that relates to my lessons in polyamory and how my core wounds show up in my relationships and how some of my more painful breakups have been just how I'm still processing them, even though they're in the past. And anyway, one of my core wounds was triggered really immensely through an ex, and I just hit this rock bottom of this core wound of feeling unworthy. And blah, blah, blah. See, this is all story, which plays into the whole, like, I get so trapped in stories when I meet a new lover that, like, I don't see red flags. But that, like, led me to re-downloading Tinder. And Tinder is my most hated app. And so I had been bouncing around and just not having any luck on OkCupid, Bumble. And it's just that thing where, like, all the cool poly people are polysaturated and
Yes.
everyone else is not polyamorous, and I'm trying to, like, avoid that. So I ended up downloading Tinder in this, like, kind of weird, like, fuck you rage, and ended up making this connection that seemed really promising, and he was, like, also thought that he was a demisexual, and he was like one of the first guys that like didn't come on too strong, which triggers my demisexuality, and that was really nice. And we went on a first date, and it was like amazing, and I really did the thing where I was like, it's finally not a trauma bond, and it totally was. And it scares me that I thought, oh, it's definitely not one, but it got really intense really fast. This is kind of fucked up to say that I don't regret it because sexually highly compatible, and I have not had super kinky compatible sex with a cis man, which is a very specific desire that I have sometimes, like, honestly, since you know who. So since 2019.
Something or other, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, it has been several years since I have had the type of sex that I really like with men. And that was really nice. Like, honestly, I really fucking needed it. And he worshipped me probably too much now that I think about it.
I was promised some kind of cooked dinner in the kitchen that I never ended up receiving.
He was
God
super
damn it.
hot. Like, I was so excited about that connection, but there was a lot of red flags, and I looked right past them. The connection was really intense. And then, it moved really fast emotionally. And I ignored, he was new to polyamory. There was honestly a lot of red flags that I cannot even talk about. And then, so trigger warning, I'm still not really ready to use specific words. So, like, if you have any triggers around boundaries and consent being violated, I would skip ahead 5 minutes. So yeah, there was just one night where a very serious boundary was violated without my consent. And I flew out of body and just kind of went with it. And then came home and was like, it's so weird to look back now. My body knew that I had been violated, because like I was like kind of having a panic attack, but my mind didn't until literally at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something like that in the middle of the night. I realized that the reason I didn't think it was a big deal the moment that it happened is because of all of the times it's happened to me in my history as a woman in the dating world with men, specifically cis men, and all of the sudden it occurred to me that just because it had happened a lot of times doesn't mean that it's not fucked up, and then it also means that every time it happened it was super fucked up. And then I just freaking spiraled. Okay, that's really all I want to say about that. So like then...
It was scary.
What was scary?
Seeing that come over you.
Oh, God, yeah, I can tell right now I haven't processed it because, like, I'm just like, oh, yeah, it was no big deal. Like, no, I definitely... it was hard because it was like that situation, but then all of them, and then I felt like I couldn't...
It was all of them.
I couldn't treat that situation seriously because I didn't deserve to, because I didn't treat the other one seriously. It was a lot. And I just realized how many women do this and how... Yeah. So... it was a big overwhelm as I came to the realization that what had happened to me was super fucked up and not okay. Like...
Right.
Yeah. So then, all of the red flags I was ignoring all of a sudden became very clear. So then there was that overwhelm. Was like, it wasn't just this one incident. It was like, oh, wait. And I've been, like, that was a red flag. That was a red flag. Like, that wasn't the first boundary he had crossed. But it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess. So then all of a sudden it occurred to me that I couldn't trust him to respect my boundaries. So I told him I never wanted to talk to him again. And then I was like, but I don't know that I can trust that he's going to listen to that, because he historically has not listened to my boundaries. And so then I was just like imploding a little bit and I didn't feel safe. And then I like told myself like, oh, well, don't be silly. You're safe. And then I was like, no, wait a minute. Stop doing that. Like, be realistic. You don't feel safe. So you were supposed to take the kids that weekend to see Jade. And I was going to have a weekend to myself at the house with that person. By that point, I had said I didn't want to see him ever again and never to talk to me again. And... I said, like, hey, I am very uncomfortable that this person knows I'll be alone this weekend. Would you mind asking Jade to, instead of you take the kids there, I didn't even ask you to cancel. I just asked if she would come here that weekend and then the next weekend take the kids. Like, I just wanted to flip when she was coming here and when you were going there so that I wouldn't be alone, like, a few days after that situation happened.
Couple of things. This person, I met them a couple of times, the person you had been dating who crossed these boundaries, and were outwardly presenting as a pretty nice person. And so it didn't seem like they had destructive potential as a human being, but at the same time, you don't really know, because when you tell a man no, then they could react in a number of ways, and one of them could be violent, and you just never fucking know. And so I think I recall us sort of waffling on that decision for a period of a few days. We didn't really, and I didn't tell Jade this right away. We kind of just talked it through. And then one day we were on a walk and we both mutually came to the feeling that it did not feel right for me to leave with the kids. And so initially you did ask me to do it, but, and I think that this is important to the story, but days later, we both felt and agreed that changing the weekends was not a big deal. I was more than prepared to come down there on a different weekend if they were willing to come here instead this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even say cancel. Just like, can you come here and like be with us? And like,
yeah. And
I just didn't.
It wasn't a big deal in my mind.
Yeah. Well, and it was just a request.
Right.
Like it wasn't. So anyway, I just thought it wasn't going to be a big deal. I was more focused on the trauma that I was like going through and the shame and feeling like just all that stuff.
And I did feel better because I couldn't have imagined making a different choice and taking the kids and leaving you behind feeling that way, and it wouldn't allow me to completely enjoy myself. And so I felt better immediately having made this decision, going, okay, this feels like the better call.
And I do think it's important to talk about one thing going through my head. Like, so every time we were like, okay, it's probably fine. Like, you and I historically are very naive.
Yes.
So, like, Joe and I have a past of trusting men and some women, actually.
That's true.
And part of it I am now learning is my neurodivergence. So, being on the spectrum, I take everything at face value. So I really don't understand when people are being inauthentic to me. So it's been helpful to have people like help me realize, since I'm only just now learning that I'm on the spectrum and my whole life makes sense, that like some of this is me not understanding when, like, because they say that people on the spectrum are like shark food for narcissists because we take everything at face value and we don't understand when people might be like manipulating.
Yeah, totally.
But you and I have believed quite a few people in our past, definitely with regarding addicts and people who are lying to our face, and we're like, oh, they are the nicest people on the planet, they would never do that. And it's just like we project because we can't fathom doing fucked up things. So then we project that everyone else also has good intentions.
We've weirdly fallen under, I'm sure as many have, fallen under the sway of some really strange, like, charlatans. You know, people who just, like, proved themselves to be, like, completely different than how they were presenting.
Yeah, and it's kind of a problem. And so, like, that's what I kept coming back to every time I was like, no, Joe's met him, like, he's probably fine. And he is. I mean, nothing ever happened, but like it still kept coming back to like, no, but we have made some really fucked up mistakes in our past with like, anyway. So that was like the crucial element for me for being like, no, for once I need to listen to my gut. Something's not right. Like, this isn't okay. So you called Jade and said like,
I explained all of that and requested that we shift the weekend to a different weekend where I would come down with the kids or just by myself, and would they be willing to come here instead, even if it was just for a day.
And she originally said like, yeah, let me like check a few things, I'll get back to you, and was fine. And we were both like, oh, I'm so relieved. And it's funny because I think we both said like, oh, that's how you know it was the right call, because we both felt relieved.
Yeah.
And then like 20 minutes later,
I get a text that is explaining, giving all of these examples of red flags that they've been noticing about how we're pulling couples.
Do you still have the text?
I
kind of want to read it. It was fucking brutal. It was brutal. She was like, Joe, listen up. I have ignored your red flags long enough. I know, like, shitty poly people when I see them.
Yeah, no, you guys are pulling couples privilege, veto power. There's a clear chain of command.
Yeah, and she was like, yeah, there's a clear chain of command here, and it's not you. Like, meaning, and so, like,
it was very, like telling me off. And we had never had any disagreements prior to this. I mean, we had gotten along really well, and it was a comfortable dynamic. I mean, there hadn't been anything.
Dude, it was out of left field. Like, it was like I was looking at the text from some bitchy, like, I just was like, this was the person you were dating?
Yes, it was like they were telling me off. And I mean, we had some discussions before about non-hierarchy, and I told them that we are moving toward relationship anarchy or non-hierarchical polyamory, but we weren't there yet. There's been a lot to unlearn, so I didn't claim to have been there yet, but at the same time, they had a different image of me, image of us, and the tone of the text was so off-putting. It was very Jersey Shore, like telling me off and causing a scene.
Like,
and just being not nice and mean.
She was just like, fuck you guys, fuck your couple's privilege, fuck the facade.
You're using your social media to your advantage, and you're putting off this false persona.
Dude, it was crazy. But here's the thing about non-hierarchy. First of all, you never claimed to be non-hierarchy. Secondly, relationship anarchy is about putting your energy into where it needs to go.
And had she not blocked me and given me a chance to respond, I would have told them, well, hey, I would have done the same thing for you. If you were the one in distress and I could break away from you and the kids to go be there for you, I would have.
What is cringy to me is that when I read that text like a million times, she's like, I have ignored every red flag. There is a clear chain of command here. And it's not you. Like, I think she had an image of me that was like, so I feel weird. Like, in her mind, I think the story was like, I was jealous and didn't want you to go see her.
That's the only thing I can possibly think of.
Even though I was fucking stoked because he was taking the kids and I was going to have a weekend to myself with my lover.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, in her mind, I think it was like this, I don't know, maybe I got broken up with, and so I was like, you have to cancel your trip, and you have to, because I'm upset and I'm jealous and I'm scared, and like, I think in her mind it was this cringy wife who wasn't really happy with polyamory using a weird excuse to tell her husband to call his girlfriend and cancel their trip this weekend. That's what I think was going on, but that was so not what was happening, and I didn't ask you to cancel it. I asked her if she would come here and switch the weekend that you were going there.
Right, and so this is what I've come to understand about relationship anarchy too, is that part of it seems to be just rolling with things like rescheduling, and I think as a parent, I've learned that more. The thing that's important for me is, are you making a proactive effort to reschedule? If you're asking someone to reschedule and you're not following up, that is a dick move in my mind. But as long as you are making a proactive effort, which I was, I feel like it can be allowed for.
Well, and also, like, she could have said, no, I'm not okay with that. I already got tickets to blah, blah, blah. I was really excited. I've already got the food. Like, she could have said no. And then I would have been like, oh, okay. Like, well, at least she could have advocated for her needs. And then we could have gone from there. Maybe she didn't understand the severity of, like, the fear that I was dealing with. And again, it wasn't this cringy, manipulative wife who's not actually happy with polyamory pulling some weird couple's privilege to cancel her husband's trip. That's not who we are. It was so off base. I was like, what the fuck? And at the end of the text, she was like, fuck you, lose my number, Joe, peace, deuces, and then blocked him. So she sent this with zero explanation. Like, who communicates like that? Oh, I'm so tired of relationship anarchists being like, I am the queen of polyamory because I have achieved relationship anarchy. Ironically, I have hierarchy in my types of polyamory.
What was so bizarre to me was that if you look at what happened, this person did not get what they wanted, which was my presence, time, or attention. And when they didn't get that, proceeded to then tell me off about what a horrible person I was.
Dude, so it was so alarming that you were dating this person and like we had this complete... It was basically you and I were each dating somebody that we thought was a completely different person.
It was so bizarre. The tone of the text was so bad that in my mind, even if she hadn't blocked me, there was no chance of a reconciliation. Like, after being talked to like that, no, I don't have any of that shit.
Yeah, no one in our life communicates like that.
No.
It was really weird.
It was really bizarre, and really,
it was like getting sideswiped because up until that point,
I wasn't even heartbroken. I wasn't even sad. I was shocked.
Well, like, up until that point, we thought, I just liked her so much. She had just invited...
I was sold on this chick.
She had just invited us to her, like, Polycule's Christmas. It looked like it was going to be this, like...
The day before.
Really giant... Like, she went from seeming so into you and so cool and so woke, I guess, to... It's almost like it was like a different person. It was, I was just not expecting you to get told off in a text. No conversation, no like self-advocacy, nothing. Just fuck you. I've ignored all of your red flags. Lose my number. And I was like, what?
Right. And so the whole thing was so bizarre that not only am I shocked, I am also simultaneously relieved that whatever that person actually is now, is no longer in my life. And so after I get this news, I'm not mad at you. Right, for asking for, you didn't, like, we both mutually agreed that it was the right thing to do. I'm not mad at that decision after this breakup. I'm like validated in it strangely.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know what the planets were doing.
That was
but like some weird it was eclipse season. It was like we had like 3 eclipses back to back, and I was like, man, those eclipses just came in and was just like chop chop chop.
Yeah.
And it's always weird to me to know that those people are also thinking like, oh, thank you to the eclipses for like eclipsing the day lovers out of my life. It's just, we're the bad guys in someone's story, and
I'm just releasing all of this negativity.
I have to stay humble to that, So anyway, that was super weird. I've never seen anybody communicate like that who was like polyamorous.
And this person was my age, was in their 40s. Polyamorous. And
so we both went from these super exciting relationships to actually kind of tragic heartbreak endings.
And I had been in some pretty intense NRE with this person. I will say I was really sold on the regional aspects, and I felt like the dynamic was good, and I definitely had gotten overexcited, ignored the red flags, and look at what happened.
Yeah, so then we came back from that and super humbled.
Big time.
We were like, I definitely knew what lessons I was learning heading into that relationship, which was to go slow, even when I wanted to speed up, and to question red flags a bit more. But I think as a neurodivergent person, red flags are very difficult for me because I gaslight myself around like, wait, did I see what I think I saw? What was that? But I knew, like, I had already learned these lessons. So I thought I knew what the lessons were with this person, but I thought I was nailing them and I wasn't. That was the jarring part, is I thought I was going slow and I wasn't going slow. And then the second it was over, I was like, whoa, I was definitely not going slow.
Yeah, no, not at all. All of those elements I was talking about were rushed with the kitchen table stuff.
And now
even with their enthusiastic consent, right?
Yeah, so we cringe at the idea that she was willing to come here and meet our family and be with our family on a first date. Not that it's cringy or inherently bad. I don't think she had bad intentions. I still think she's a really good person. Like, totally. I'm very just confused about that whole thing. But like, just that we need to be more suspicious of people. The day lovers are fucking puppies. And that's what I realize, is that you and I as lovers are very immature, but not immature in like a narcissist
not in a
way.
Jersey Shore way.
No, in like, we're like puppies, and so we meet people and we think they have the best of intentions, and we think, well, as long as their intentions are good and as long as they're good people, then we can just jump right to this kitchen table blended family, take our kids to stay with her for a weekend, and like now we're like, you know what? Maybe we need to go slow even when it seems like you don't need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what that thing is where we're just willing to take people at face value.
Oh my God.
For what they're saying, and okay, so that's what you're able to, cool, sweet. There's no reason in my mind for me to question you or think that maybe you're presenting yourself in a certain way.
Yeah, and like then we had this other aha moment where I had to tell Joe, like, babe, I don't think you realize kind of how big we are now, because in my mind we're still small potatoes.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Because like all of the people that I admire, their platforms are, 2, 5, 10 times bigger than ours, and so I still feel like small potatoes. But then there are these moments where I realize, like, you know what? I mean, maybe we need to have quite a bigger vetting process when somebody if you meet someone on a dating app who happens to know who we are, like, that's pretty likely because we live in a smallish city and we were already public figures before our platform took off.
True.
So it's kind of hard to meet someone who doesn't know us, but it's different when someone comes through our page. And a lot of people have exclusive, like, I will not date you if you approach me from my page rules, and now I understand why. I don't think it's inherently wrong, but I just think our vetting process, and I'm not saying that this was Jade's intention, but this situation brought at least into my consciousness that some people might want to be near us simply because they feel like they know us, or because they might feel powerful being in relationship with us because we are public figures or something like that. And again, not saying that's her intentions, but it brought to my mind that we are now at the point where we actually, if you know who we are, our vetting process might need to be a whole hell of a lot more suspicious.
Yeah.
Than like, hi, welcome to the family, I love you.
Yeah, no, totally. We are way too accepting when it comes to people in general. And the situation did illuminate a lot of things about our public identities, which are actual versions of us. Those are true and accurate and to life as to how we actually are. But there's also a discrepancy between what that creates in someone's mind and then their actual experience of getting to know us.
Yeah, so true. So it was just like, wow, it was just like hell, like the eclipses came, pulled these people out of our lives, and then like this massive awakening of like what it truly means to not be a puppy when it comes to romance and love. Like, I think it's okay to meet someone and be like, wow, babe, this could be really promising. Like, I could go there once a month and even take the kids and like kitchen table, and she's interested in being involved as another adult, which is like our dream, is to have allo parents in the polycule helping us with the kids. But just like recognizing that just because it feels like it's at that point doesn't mean it should be at that point.
Right, and an interesting counterpoint at the same time is that simultaneously, while all this is happening, I'm in a different NRE with Annie Undone. And she and I have talked about how, had we been in the same city, we would have gotten easily consumed by this dynamic too, that kind of overeager degree.
Yeah.
So like that was only kind of kept at bay because we're on different sides of the country.
Yeah, and so like this realization that a mature lover goes slow even when they don't have to. And I think mature polyamorous parents, and this is hard for us to admit because we get a lot of critiques about how, like, we can't believe you let your children meet people. Like, that seems just not, like, that seems uncouth, blah, blah, blah. And we always have said, well, how is it any different than introducing our kids to a colleague or whatever? And we still stand behind that, but now we humbly admit that, like, yeah, you might have to jump through a few hoops before we're willing to bring you into their lives. Not because we're afraid of like them getting attached and you leaving, because we don't buy into that whole thing, but simply because you have to earn it and we have to be suspicious for a couple weeks.
Yeah, or just a slower process to ensure that it happens in the right step, in the right moment, and is not out of order, if that makes sense. There was a moment when Aslan said something like, Daddy's new friend. And it kind of just clicked into my mind of how kind of willy-nilly I've been about the whole thing.
So if you're listening to this is our humility showing up on this podcast, and I hope that means something to you and like allows you to just understand, like, we're not perfect. We never said we were, and that was like what I wanted to say to this bitch, like like, you're using your platform to manipulate people. Like, if you get on our platform and think we're perfect, I definitely didn't say that. In fact, I feel like we are praised for how honest we are about our imperfections.
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of our storytelling is, okay, here's the latest thing that went wrong.
Here's the latest dumb fuck shit that we did.
Yeah. And I remember you afterward had to do kind of one of your seasonal, hey, don't put the Daylovers on a pedestal kind of posts.
Yeah, I did. And that was for her. Or inspired by that situation.
Thank you very much, Jade.
Yeah, like do not pedestal us. And I know the parasocial relationship phenomenon is really weird, but like, do not pedestal us, because then if you pedestal us and then we make a mistake, it crashes harder in your world, because you put us on a pedestal, but I didn't ask for one. So we are not perfect. So that was a really weird, and then like we both did this 180. Like, I came to you and said, like, we need to seriously change, because I had the whole puppy awakening that like I love like a puppy and I trust like a puppy, and that we need to be and that we're just a little too eager and too excited for love and sex, but like also love, and like looking for someone who wants to help us with our kids, and like just all of those things make us so excited about polyamory and about life that we just are like so we both did a 180, and I love that about us. Like, I just think with an unhealthier dynamic, situations like this can just be like, see, you're a fucking idiot and this is why polyamory is dangerous and doesn't work. But for us, we're just like, hey, we've been moving too fast and we need to do things differently. And we have been like, our energy hadn't been in our home, like shit like laundry wasn't getting done.
Yeah, it was just time to refocus, and I appreciate that about our relationship in general. I remember us kind of both giving each other the space and the grace to kind of be like, you know what, this didn't go as great as expected, and in fact, it was pretty bad in how it ended, but we're going to take the lessons and integrate and move forward.
Yeah, so we did, and then, gosh, what is time? You know, I thought that I was like done, but every time I say I'm done, but we took like a couple weeks off of like,
I had to,
of actively looking, and we really regrounded back into parenthood and back into our home and just back into realizing like, wow, we have a lot of growing to do. And then that was like the end of October. And then my birthday is the end of November. Around that time, I connected also with somebody just a couple hours away, a content creator, Albert of @PolymanAnswers.
What's up, Albert?
Yeah, they're a queer, Vietnamese, polyamorous, non-binary content creator, a couple hours west of us. And I had been like jokingly, there's a big group chat with, I think there are, I can't remember how many are in the chat, but some of the biggest content creators across the globe on Instagram, and we chat all day long, and they're in the chat, and I found out that they were just a couple hours away, and I said we should go on a date, and then that joke turned into like, no, we should go on a date. So I went to see them for the weekend before my birthday, and they spoiled the shit out of me, and we did so much growing.
I was so jealous.
Yeah. They're like a world-class
ramen or some
No, they're like a world-class chef, like not by trade, but just by hobby. And so it was such a lovely weekend, and I went in with the like, here's what I'm learning. I'm learning not to rush NRE and not to give in to NRE, actually. And they were like, I'm learning that too. And so we just had the most magical weekend of just playing in what I called the big question mark. And it was so wholesome. Nothing sexual happened, but it was like kinky and playful and just very romantic. They're also unpacking a lot of where they think that they are ace. So they're on a whole journey right now. And it was just like, it's like I had hit this kind of bottom of awakening of everything I've been doing wrong in the dating world, and then I started to emerge back into the light, and my first experience was a weekend with them, and we made some really great content together, which you can find on my Instagram, on our Instagram. And then I came back, decided to approach dating apps differently because I had previously, as a demisexual, only been comfortable going out with folks who would spend weeks talking to me. And I wanted to see if I could push myself out of that comfort zone and just meet up with people right away, which was like my demisexual nightmare. But I wanted to see if I could just trust my body. And I realized if I put a very limited cap on the date, like, oh, I have 45 minutes for a coffee, but then I have a thing after. That was the thing that made it like I could do it. Because to me, the idea of going on a first date with someone that, you know, let's go have drinks and then go do who knows what, that gave me anxiety of like, well, what if you don't even know if you like them? But the idea of like, oh, I have 45 minutes for a coffee, that was the game changer for me. So I got back on apps, made a bunch of connections, had some terrible experiences with men who just were not respecting my boundaries of like, I don't like it when you flirt sexually with me until we have met and know that we like each other. And so I had made a bunch of matches, and then my goal was to go out with all of them. And even if nothing came of it, just to challenge myself to go out and not spend weeks talking to them. And so I had 2 horrible experiences that were so horrible that I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm taking a break from dating apps. I'm just done for a minute. Like I can't do this. And I had one more connection that I had made, and I actually was like, I'm just going to cancel on him, tell him, sorry, better luck next time. And then for some reason I was like, nope, I'm going to give this one more date. So I had 3 terrible dates. Well, I had 3 dates scheduled for 1 week. 2 were terrible and ended terribly. And then I was going to cancel on this dude, but I ended up not, and I ended up meeting him for coffee. That was a month ago, actually, a month ago today. I wonder if he knows it's our 1 month. I need to text him.
Yeah, and I remember it was like 8 in the morning, and I was giving you shit like, you're going to get up at 8 in the morning and go on this coffee date? Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then we both pushed it back till 8:30. And on the first date, how weird is this? So in October, I had a surgery that was like very personal, very personal surgery. And on this first date, we find out that he was my surgical nurse for that surgery. Total coincidence.
Reno coincidence.
Yeah, it's a very Reno moment. And he has no memory. Like, I mean, it's not like he remembers me. I mean, he's
seen a few patients.
Yeah. So he is a hospice nurse on the weekends, and then he works for a surgeon during the week, and he was my surgery nurse, so we thought that was super cute. It was kind of a rough first date in that I don't think that he's good at first dates. I kind of gave him a hard time for it, but there was something about him that I was so smitten with that motherfucker got so lucky. And in true Jess fashion, on the first date, I gave his Tinder profile a makeover with fresh pictures that I took on the spot and edited, and redid his whole profile because he was so cute and so wholesome. And I was like, I just have to let you know, because he was like, I said, what do you think of dating apps? And he was like, they're terrible. I never get any matches. And I was like, that's because your profile does not do you justice, boo-boo. Yeah. Hand me your phone. So he handed me his phone, and I redid his profile.
You're good at that shit.
Thank you. People pay me for it, $50, and I will.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
You want to up your profile game, or if you feel like you suck at online dating, you have really helped me out in that regard.
Yes, I am so good at dating profiles. I think it's an amount of vanity that can't be taught, and my background in marketing. So, and my neurodivergence. I think all that combines for me to make really awesome online dating profiles. If you're interested, email remodeledlove@gmail.com. There's like an interview process, and then I send you some ideas. Anyway, so I told him, like, if you get a date, because I redid your profile, you owe me a steak. And that's ended up how we ended up to keep talking.
That's smart.
Yeah, thanks. It was like 5 minutes later, like, he left the coffee shop and he was like, I owe you a steak. I just got a match. And I was like, bitch, I told you.
Yeah.
But anyway, it turns out he lives 4 blocks away and doesn't have kids, is single. So it's just very convenient. And he is like literally the most wholesome dude on the planet, probably other than you.
Yeah, is sort of the Georgia version of me, I think.
Georgia?
Oh, sorry, I revealed the state that they're from.
He's from Florida.
Oh, I thought he was from Georgia.
I don't think so. I think he's from Florida. He's from the South. So
the southern version of Mr. Daylover.
Yeah. No, you guys have such similar energy. He has 5 Capricorn placements, and his major 3 are Capricorn, which is like, I've never seen that before in my life. So this boy is just like all earth energy. And he's just a really good dude, and I like him so much. Yeah, I am so smitten with him. And so that's going really well, and we're actually keeping it real. Because I'm keeping it real.
What? Because I'm keeping it real. I think I have learned a lot of similar lessons. We seem to parallel one another in our polyamorous journeys and the things that show up for us in different dynamics and dates and people we form relationships with. And since then, the people that I've made connections with, some really awesome ones through field actually, have taught me in different ways to slow things down and to kind of approach things a little bit more guardedly and not be so trusting and to counteract whatever that puppy dog instinct is. And it's been really interesting how in a few separate dynamics that has proven to be true again, but in different ways, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think one of the most humbling things that I keep in mind is the realization that the puppy dog energy should be a red flag to someone else.
100%.
That's the thing that is like, whoa. That I have a lot of traits that should be a red flag to a woke poly person. That's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, or just like a woke relationship person that you see kind of some of the signs that would present problems later on.
Right. So anyway, so it's our 1 month, and I haven't seen him for 2 weeks because we got COVID.
Fucking COVID.
Yeah. Luckily we are okay. The boys are okay, but me out of this fucking quarantine.
Get me out of this fucking quarantine. But this has been really awesome, and I'm proud of us for sticking through with the podcast despite what we call the COVID crash.
Yeah, around 7:30 we get the COVID crash, and it's just like we just want to go to bed, but we like push through, and now it's 10:20. We're up so late.
Yeah, and there's a weird energy to this thing. Thankfully, our cases have been mild, but there's a sort of psychological weariness to it, and maybe that's just from having been in this fucking pandemic for going on 2 years now, and not being able to, no one is apparently able to outrun Omicron.
Outrun Omicron. Okay, so we have to do another episode soon just like this, because I want to talk about more into you have your long distance relationship. Lore from the Death Doula from season 1
is coming to Reno. I haven't seen them in 2 years. I am so excited.
Yeah, and I would like you to talk about everything you're learning sexually.
They want to record a podcast, of course.
Awesome. We have to do that. And then you have we have some really exciting stuff happening. So like this major brand that I'm obsessed with, it wants to collaborate with us, and they want to sponsor the podcast. So like those negotiations and talks are starting next week. My partner, we'll call him Jay, is taking me away for a couple days. So on Monday, I'm going on a road trip with him to Oregon, to the Oregon coast.
if it's not getting beaten down with tsunamis.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
I think, yeah, you're probably in the clear.
And I'm really excited. So follow us on Instagram. Hey, if you like what we're doing, you like the Day Lovers, you believe in our mission, you believe in Remodeled Love, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, join our Patreon. Head to remodeledlove.com. You can find links to all the ways you can support us. If you just want to send us a tip on Venmo or PayPal, you can do that. But join our Patreon. Starting at the $5 a month level or higher comes with really cool exclusive benefits. If you want a coaching session with us, all of that can be done through remodeledlove.com. One of the most important things you can do to help us is to share our media with your friends. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Facebook sucks, but we do have a page there.
Yeah, it exists.
And we just love you all so much.
So fucking much.
You're listening to Remodeled, the podcast.
Fall in love just a little bit every day with someone new. I fall in love just a little bit every